it's the proudest day and the proudest time in the seat of a rally car, because that day and that hour and those minutes, I got the bit between my teeth. You know, I really stood up and was counted and said, this is not getting away. I remember when we pulled on our helmets and Donald says to me, what are we doing? I said, we're going for gold, Barrett. That's all was said. I can still picture that run. That was just the best run ever.
Welcome along to Krunching Gears, the rally podcast, a Donnelly Motorsport special. What can we say? Absolute pleasure to be joined by Eugene and Charlie Donnelly, and then Paul Kelly as well too. Connor, what an evening's crack we had.
Oh, listen, it was a great couple of hours, and to be honest, it could easily have been, quite a few more hours longer had time allowed. It was just non-stop.
Yeah, like three characters, I suppose, and the whole three of them, they have something about them, I don't know what you call it, the X factor or what, but the way they can spin the story, the crack, it was mighty. It really was, wasn't it?
It was a great evening's crack, and you're right, they're good yarn tellers, and there's plenty of entertainment with them. There's no doubt about that.
That's for sure. And like around Draperstown, Motorsport, that's where you kind of got the rally bug in your earlier days.
Absolutely, that's where I fell in love with rallying, and it was growing up with being involved in Marfelt Motor Club and Eugene and Charlie there at the heart of it, and it was good times, and it was going out to some very early stages in Monaghan and Cavan, and going Donegal was always the event that everybody in the club looked forward to, and then you had the local events there, the lanes, and then around the Tobermoor Blockyard and stuff. So absolutely, just great times, and when we get into the interview and the chat with him, it started out with Kevin asking, growing up in Mahara, where did you get interested in motorsport? And Eugene wasn't long pulling him up on that faux pas.
Right, I think without further ado, we'll catch up with the boys.
My father, I would say, wasn't it, Eugene?
Let's correct that. It wasn't growing up in Mahara. We were born and reared in Draperstown to start off.
Well, Draperstown, yeah.
And I think, my memory of it anyway, Dad was always big in it, and obviously we had a garage. It was a family business, and he sold Ford cars. So, in the late 60s, early 70s, that was the car to rally, a Mark I Escort. And that's where I certainly got my love out of it, seeing the magazines coming in with, the cars won in the RAC rally, and, all that sort of stuff. And as I got older, Charlie obviously was the mad one in the house, and he started ripping and wrecking around the garage.
You that?
I was always planted in the passenger seat, and look, that's just where the love of speed came from, and our father didn't really discourage it, Charlie, being that wee bit older, could tell you a lot more stories about my eldest brother Jim and my other brother Peter. Robbing cars.
Well, Jim would have an interest in it. Jim would have he would have done up the cars in the other days. He had the money with the seat covers with the two padded sides in it, and he had the Ford Anglia with the spot lamps and the big wheels and all that stuff. But the first memory I have of any of that sort of stuff was my father had two Mini Cooper S's, and him and a guy that worked for us were taking them till Cookstown or somewhere. They were going somewhere with them anyway. And the two of them come to the right-hand corner, and both of them missed the road and straight up into the middle of a field. So that always sticks with me about about racing and stuff anyway. And then Jim would have he was into bodywork and stuff, so he would have had your spot lamps and your 40 dice and the whole lot, and would have been racing. The thing that introduced us to all of this stuff was Draperstown was a famous town for, and probably maybe still is, for a bit of racing and a bit of ripping at night. And we would have been in the middle of that, and you would have toured about the town, and you would have come on somebody that was in a similar type car, the Greg McCormicks and the boys that got there, and the next thing would have been a bit of John Dane from one to the other, and out the road they would have went flat to the tin. And that's where the the learning the car control and stuff. That's where it all started. Was that way there. So it wasn't the first rally car ever I bought was a blue Mexico Escort, and it was bought for night navigations.
Right.
The old style night navigation, where it was a rally car, and you met up at some pub or some filling station or somewhere, and you got the diagrams or the thing all plotted out, and off you went, and like it was completely crazy. It was closed road rally. It was closed road rallying at 10 and 11 o'clock at night, like on open roads. Like it was totally crazy, you know. And the Shaws, like the old, no, remember Leo Shaw in the rallying?
Mm-hmm.
His cousin Kieran and his another brother Kieran's was Jimmy and Crawford Henderson. You know, all that group of boys. That's where we all learned the driving. Was
Mm-hmm.
at them. You know, like either racing among ourselves at night or at the night navigations. That's where it all started. Was back then.
Yeah, and like, those were great events, even for navigators and all, like learning how to plot maps and how to read maps.
You had to plot the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You had to plot the thing. The only thing different about a navigation, or supposedly about a night navigation rally now, is that you have to take the time to do from one thing to another. Back then, it was whoever was there first. So that was totally crazy, like,
Yes.
And another thing we used to do too, when we hadn't the cars to do it, was we used to know a road that they were going on and then pull out behind them and follow them. And that was another very educational thing that we done, yeah. So
that's where Charlie learned his flamboyant style.
That's where we learned all the stuff, yeah.
No, that's where you learned your flamboyant style.
Probably, yeah.
You were still novice at that stage.
The first rally car, proper rally car, then was a Mark 1 Escort, and it was bought.
3/3.
Oh boy,
Charlie.
Do you mean the white one with the white and blue one?
Yeah.
The Mark 1. There's a photograph in Car Sport on one of the Dava rallies. I think it was the first ever Dava rally, or maybe the second. And about a half dozen corners from the end, it didn't want to go around the square right for me, and it went off down into the trees. And my brother Peter was sitting with me, and he had, I don't know, it turned out he had an apple in the passenger seat, right? So he climbed out my side, and the window was down, and he went in the window again to get this apple, and somebody took a photograph, and they put it in Car Sport, and there was a caption. It was a competition. What do you think he's looking for? You know what I mean? So if you ever could find, if anybody knows with that Car Sport magazine, that's the year, and that was one of the first, or that was about the second or third rally ever we done. And I drove that day, and Peter sat with me, and we damaged the left hand side of it, and that was on a Wednesday night. It was that time, and Jim and I took till it on the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and pulled it and fixed it. And the only wing we could get was like a 13 Sport wing, which had just a wee small arch, and the other were all bubble arches. But we put it on it anyway, and we set sail for a single venue in Coot Hill on the Sunday. And I had spent a couple of nights, well, there was the Friday night, I think I didn't get to bed at all, and the Saturday one was very nearly the same. And when we got down there, I was that tired and worn out that Peter ended up driving, and Jim, God rest him, he sat with him, and that was the only rally ever Jim done. So it was. But the best thing of all was that this long ago now, so this evidence can't be used against me. The entry was in my name with Pete sitting, and that's the way it did. And the fella, Davy Hamilton, come down, one of the organisers, he was the clerk of the course. He come down and he opened the door and he stuck his head in and he said, "Well, Charlie, how's it going?" And then he realised, man, there was no Charlie in there. And then he says, "Good to see you, Charlie." And he just closed the door and away he went. So back them days there was no race suits, there was none of them things, and all there was a lot of different things. Isn't that right, Paul? You would have been back at that time too.
Yeah, a wee bit back at that time. Yeah, night nerves,
Yeah.
all that stuff. Late at night, it was great to be out in the middle of the night on a Friday or Saturday night, tearing around the road in different counties. But when I started as well, there was no race suits. There was a t-shirt, and you barely had a helmet.
Mm-hmm. And even in the car, there'd been very little sort of like giving a basic roll cage and probably a fire extinguisher, not much else.
No, there wasn't an awful lot. And I started in my first stage rally was in actually was talking about it's too long ago now and you can't be done for it. But my first stage rally was Donegal International 86. Right. And to get the license, I had to three signatures on the license. And I got 2 of them off kind of half legitimately. But I forged Matt, what do you call him, Eugene? Matt
Doherty.
Matt Doherty. Yeah, I told him in 2004 we were out having a cigarette when we won the rally, and I told him, I have something to tell you. We've been meaning to tell you for years. But you were on about not being able to be done for it, but I forged this thing to get the license to start the rally because I wanted to do Donegal. And that was my first rally ever, starting my experience of rallying in Donegal International. So I think Eugene done his first one, 86 as well, was it?
Yeah, first Donegal International was 86, yeah. But hey,
you and I done that, Eugene, was it?
It's a good job, Paul. We had Matt on our side, didn't it?
Yeah, I suppose it kind of helped it helped in the future. But Matt was always on the side of how would I word this? I suppose he was always on the side if you done things right. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
or near enough right. I think there was a lot more than you got signatures done too, Paul.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, I can only tell my story. So
yeah.
You nervous laughs going on there.
Yes. and Charlie, like Eugene being the younger brother, like he was always that bit younger than yourselves. Was he always like and nosing around the garage wanting to be involved, or was he just?
I always showed him good. I thought you were going to say, did you always show him good examples? Well, he was more. I was more the mechanical end of the thing. I would have been working at the cars from I was around the garage from I was 5 or 6 or 7. I'd always put it at the car. Whereas Eugene really didn't get involved in that side of it. And he wouldn't have really come on the scene until he got a license.
Okay.
And once he got a license, then that's when his real interest showed in it then, was whenever he got a license. The first car you had, Eugene, do you remember, it was a red Escort, wasn't it?
Well, the first rally car was the blue Escort that you, Jim, welded up. That was the first car I actually rallied.
But you shelled an old red car into that, didn't you?
I had a couple of old cars, I had a Mark 1 Escort for a wee while. It didn't have it very long, but I had a Mark 2 that put all the rally gear into it, but never left it, never fireproofed it, and never seam welded it, and didn't put in the fire extinguishers when I got there. So it was just ripping about not there, but all good stuff in it, good dampers in it, decent box, quick rack, all that stuff. But it had come to the end of its life, and Charlie and Jim had built a shell and a Mark II and seam welded and did all the kit in it. And I shelled my road car into it, and that was my first rally car. And the first rally,
Eugene, do you not remember the reason you got that shell?
I have no idea, Charlie. Oh, the black
Jim and I and a friend of mine, John Kelly, took in the shell, and we thought that we were going to make this great shell, so everything that we thought that it would need to make it better and stronger and everything, we decided to do it. So we put in the cage and all that sort of stuff, but we decided that we'd take it was 1/8 or 1/4 plate, and we would put it from the bottom of the sill into the chassis leg, so as if it did go off, it would slide over the top of everything. And we took one night and we welded it. The two, John and I, well, Jim done a bit, but I done a bit, and John also, he done a bit. And he's a fella they called John Kelly. He was the bug they called him. He was at rallying too. He had a great D3 one time and done a bit of racing in that. But anyway, we welded it down the two sides and put these two skid pads on the two sills. And he went home and I went home. And of course, we got totally flashed like with welders. And I couldn't. The whole thing started about whatever 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And Mammy had experience of it, knowing what to do. But in the middle of it, I says, you better ring John. And she says, why? And I said, well, if I got, he did. And she rang him, and eventually, I don't know how he got the phone, but he was completely blind. And he got the phone, and he was like, totally hysterics down the phone that he couldn't see a thing, like, So Mammy went up and got him and took him down into the room at our house and put the two of us into the room and blanked out the windows and started putting stuff on her eyes and all. And we were in there for 24 hours. So, and the kid that he thought he was blinded. And after that, I kind of lost the will to do much more after that. And that was around the time that Eugene decided that he would take it on then, and him and Jim finished it. And we painted it a dark blue with a yellow stripe down it, and there was a black vinyl roof on. And the reason it was painted blue and yellow was Jim painted a win of lorries for boys, and it was blue paint with yellow stick on, no paint left over. So now Eugene, you can put all your good stuff into it now.
Well, I was going to say that was the first car I did an actual rally with, and that was Cavan. I think maybe 1984 or 85 Cavan stages. But Charlie bought a red Mark II. It was like a Group 1 Escort at the time, and that was the only rally my father ever did. My father sat with Charlie.
Dundalk, Eugene. That's Dundalk.
Well,
remember that.
Cavan, I'm not on air, Charlie. I have the trophy, so I'm pretty sure. But you.
Cavan. Oh, maybe it was Cavan. You're right, it was Cavan. Sorry, because Daddy took the trophy home that day too. That's right. Yeah.
So, that was it was a very nostalgic thing for me. Like looking back at it now, that my dad actually was there and competed in the rally that I first did, and the two of them won their class and were, I don't know, you were 7th or 8th overall, Charlie. I think.
He sat in with me and. Again, Paul's situation, Pete had a license and he was Peter Donnelly, so Peter Donnelly was my father's name, so he had a license then too. So then he got, and it was like what they called that time a Group A Escort, and it had a harness on it, but there was no ball belt on it, like. And he got in anyway, and he had the top coat on him, and he took off the cap, and I got the helmet on him, and he put the glasses on. And we tightened down. I said, you not take the coat off? And he says, no. She said, all right, the coat on. So he kept the coat on anyway, and him and I done the rally, and that is the way he was. And there was a couple of memorable bits in it. There was one in particular where he got out the road book and he started reading down through the road book, and the next thing I could see the hand, he had a bit of Parkinson's, and the hand was jumping a bit, and I could see him pointing in this, and it was yo. He was trying to yo. What's that there? He says, nice, that's a yump that. What's that? And I said, don't worry, I'll tell you when we're coming to one. So I said, all you do is, I said, see that bit there, you hand that out and the boy will put the time on it, and then turn the page on that thing there, and that'll get us from one stage to the other, and I'll be for to read it. But when it comes to the stage thing, I said, don't bother, just sit there and enjoy the crack. So we got into the first stage anyway, and we're bombing down the first stage anyway, and we come to a hairpin right up a hill, there is a photograph, I have it in the house here, of a guy was standing up on the hedge on the left hand side, and it's photographed, and it has him in the photograph with the top coat and all on him. So bombed down the straight anyway, and he was laughing and cajoling and chatting away, and the next thing he says to me, what about down them yump things? And I says to him, hold on, and I happened to down, there was a bit of a straight and there was a humpback bridge. So I come flying out of them, and I never said what it was. I says, the one I'm coming now. And I come to the bridge, and I never lifted it. And the yoke took off anyway, and she landed. And when she landed, there was an old footrest in it and all, but at the same time, he didn't brace himself for it. And whenever it landed, he slid down the seat, and the helmet come forward and knocked the glasses off, and the books went all around the floor and the whole lot, until the laugh, and I started laughing. So I reached over and I gathered him up anyway, I got him straightened up, and he was trying to get the glasses back in, and he pushed the helmet back in me, and he kind of looks at me, and I was laughing away at him, and he says, I'll mind them yump things the next time, he says. So, I never forgot that anyway, you know. And then when we went to the prize giving, as usual, there was too many of us, and everybody wanted into the prize giving, and you got so many tickets for everybody. So I always give mine away, and I reckoned that I'd get in some way. And I had Dad with me, and we went walking into the door and the hotel to get into the prize giving. And hey, some changed now, and back then the place was bunged, like, and you needed the tickets to get in. So that's why we standing, this other boy was standing at the door anyway, and I said who I was and what the crack, and I won the class, and he says, all right. And he came along, a lot of people behind me, and the boy says, where are you going? And he says, I'm going in here. And the boy, he says, what do you mean you're getting in here? You need a ticket to get in here. And he says, no, he says, I sat in Australia today. And the boy, he looked at him as if to say, aye, surely. He says, aye, I sat in Australia today. And the boy, he gave in anyway and let him in with a bit of an argument anyway. And when him and I went up to get the award, the boy was standing on the stage, and of course he goes up by anyway and gives him the wee dunt with the shoulder going by and lifted his big pint jug and coming walking back down again. He's coming back down again. He clipped it off the side of a radiator and took a nice big crack out of the corner of his and he was so pissed, actually. So pissed. So that was Eugene's first rally, and it was a memorable one for Dad as well. So it was.
That's for sure. That is for sure.
So
memorable in every way, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Charlie, you bought and sold rally cars then for a few years then around that time as well. You're kind of always trading and wheeling and dealing, I suppose.
It wasn't even so much me, to be truthful. I maybe had to go with the first one or two, and then it was more Eugene was into that.
Right. Okay.
I would have been in England at the car auctions, and then he would have come out and from that point of view. But then he had went and got the Motor News on a Wednesday, and it didn't come out till Thursday at home. So on a Wednesday we got her in England wherever we were, and off we would set then. Whatever we could see in it, off we went. And the crack used to be deadly. You talk about deals. We landed to buy cars, and if the boy had a mat belonging to the yoke in the house, Eugene was went to the house after to get it. When he bought the yoke, he bought everything. He took everything that the boy had. There was an Escort we bought one night, and we couldn't get enough. There wasn't enough room in the two cars we were driving to get everything into it, but we got them into it. He took everything off the boy. Do you remember the boy we bought the black Escort of Eugene? He was going to buy a 205 Peugeot, and you went to another boy's house to get a bit of an engine that the boy had that was sitting at some other boy's house. But it was more Eugene. Eugene got into that more than me then. You know?
I like leave anything behind. Everything had value. But it's I come back out of America, I think about 92 or 3, and I wanted to go rallying, and as Charlie says, he was in and out of England a lot, and I used to go over to the auctions with him, and that's where I said, like, I had a few quid gathered up, and I ended up buying a car and brought it home, and for some reason, I can't even remember what the car was, but for some reason, there was a lot of interest in it, and I said, right, okay, I'll sell that, and I'll buy another one, and I just kind of fell into it, and then obviously Charlie, he seen me doing it, and he helped me, like, and the next thing we were off, for sake, there was a fellow who used to transport cars for us, and I remember him ringing him up and telling him that 5 cars lifted, and he says, I said, they're in 5 different locations. Right, okay. So I got him the location, sent him off, and met him at each one, and put these rally cars all onto the back of like an 8-car transporter, 9-car transporter, and landed the whole thing home. That was in 1 week. Like, that was the biggest buying I'd ever done at that time. Landed all this crap home, and some of them I broke up, and some of them I sailed on. And here, look, I was making a bit of a living out of it, and I was doing a bit of rallying as well, which was really what it was about. It had nothing to do with really making money for anything other to go rallying.
And that was by Dan's introduction to rallying as well. Because remember, he went with you. He went with you then when he was only 16 or 17 or 18 at the time.
I met Barry, and he had a bit of a flair for it, and he was fixing the cars and bits and pieces. So I said to him, come on, we'll form a wee company, and we called it Domac. DOMAC, and we rented a shed and started putting the cars in it. And Barry would do the bit of prep work, or he would do the bit of dismantling, and he'd be about the garage when I'd be away. You know, if I was in England. And that ran successfully for maybe a year, maybe a couple of years. And I kind of got diverse into other stuff as well. Like I had a couple of shops and filling stations. And they were taking up a bit of my time. And then Barry, he decided he'd go out on his own. And I kind of lost a bit of the interest in it as well. But, you know, I think I was at it maybe from 92 to 97 or 8. I think it was right up until
a good 2 years.
It was added up until I bought the G3 of Kevin Bard. That was kind of the last car I was buying to actually sell on. And then when I bought it, it was on 13-inch wheels. And Barry, he says to me, "We'll try 15s on it, see what it will do." Anyway, long story cut short, it was a bit of hooly and pulley, and then we took the gearbox out and put another box into it and changed the gearing on it a bit, put 15-inch wheels on it, and went up the road on it. The two of us just looked at one another. We just couldn't believe the traction it was getting. And that was the start of the G3. I just said, this thing's too good to sell, you know. So that was the start of it, like, you know.
That's for sure. And Paul, just before we get into the whole G3 era and all that, you rose up through the ranks fairly quickly too. Whenever you were co-driving, sitting with the likes of Alan Johnson, Vincent Bonner, and Pat Kirk. But you had a big tip with Pat Kirk in Galway in '93. Was like we've seen that the kind of people have talked about that accident. That was a pretty major accident at that time. Was it hard to come back from that then?
Yeah, it was at the time. I kind of had I was kind of told I couldn't go back because I had other responsibilities, and it was a long time off after that accident. But just you said there, sitting with different people. That thing on EWRC that I sat with Vincent Bonner, that wasn't me. That was actually my brother.
Oh, that's Kevin. Ah.
Kevin sat with Vincent Bonner in that rally, and I was second. That was in Mayo in '87, and I was second with Alan Johnson, and I won the national title co-driver, but Bonner won the driver's title. I don't know how my name got mixed up on that result.
Forgery.
Another
forgery.
No. But I don't know how it got mixed up. I never sat with Vincent Bonner, but Kevin sat with him.
Okay.
Sat with him a couple of times. Rory couldn't go to that rally for some reason, and Kevin was called into it, and we finished first and second. And in Mayo in Ballina, my mother was from Ballina, and she was really proud that the two boys were first and second and whatever. But then,
was it through him you got involved in the rally?
No, it's through McAvinny.
Oh, that's how you got in it.
No, well, I suppose, Kevin would have been my introduction to it, going to Donegal in the 70s and into the 80s, and Brian Nelson and Bertie and Bonner and John Price and Buckley's and all them boys back then. That's what really brought me into it. It was fabulous. But the after the thing with Kirk was I had finished up with Johnson or whatever, and Kirk rang one day to go to, I think it was Donegal International in the Nova, and I had done rallies with Alan in the 240 and the Lotus and all of that stuff, and I kind of was him and on, and he says he I don't know how many you know Kirk well enough there, but he says, hold on a minute now. He says, just don't be put off because this is a Nova. And I kind of was put off because I didn't really want to go back down to a 1600 car and whatever. So I went anyway. Jesus, I enjoyed that car. It was a fabulous couple of years in that. And it was just, it brought me to another kind of a place where it doesn't have to be the best car to enjoy yourself. Do you know what I mean? But I really enjoyed it back then. But then when he had to go and get this Metro thing then, and anytime Pat got into a big car, he couldn't it always ended in disaster. But that was a big shunt, and I didn't sit in the car again after that for like 6 years, I think. Yeah, it was about 6 years. So yeah, it did put me off for a while, yeah.
Yeah. And Charlie, at the time then you're talking about, and Eugene got the G3 and all, you were progressing, your cars were getting better, and you end up with the yellow Manta. Was that from Richard Hall you got it then as well?
The first car that well, we had different results in different cars. There was a green Escort that I had a few really good runs on, and what we would have done when we had bought them and took them home, we'd have took home, and there was a rally on that weekend. You picked one of them and you sorted it out, whatever, on a Friday or Saturday, and you're wrong, and you got an entry on Sunday evening, and way down the road you went Sunday morning, and you done the rally, and you let everybody know it was for sale, and then there was somebody looking about it then on Monday or Tuesday, that sort of way. And this green car in particular, I had been out in another blue car that Eugene had bought, and had done, fella Dickie Young and I had done dock on it, and I wrecked it. I mean wrecked it. It was only the bottom half of the passenger's door was only about to straight on when I was finished. So anyway, I took the engine out. Eugene and I bought this 2.4 Escort, a green one, a lime green one, in London, and we drove it from one end of London to the other, which was as much fun as we had on it any other than that. And it turned out the block was porous in it. I'd done some of the single venues in the middle of the country with Castle single venue, some of them anyway, and the block was porous in it. So when I wrecked that other car, then we put the engine and all out of it into this green one, and I done Donegal harvest in it, but it wasn't a harvest. It was some other rally anyway. But Eugene Ferry, that was the first introduction we had to Eugene Ferry, and Eugene Ferry rang me and he says, was I selling the car? And I says, well, if it lasts this rally, definitely, if you want it. So he come to the rally, and I done the rally, and he bought it. So there was a few bits and pieces, and then I bought a white Escort of in England, and it was Dave Brooks had done the engine in it, and it was one of the very first normally aspirated Cosworth engines, and it turned out to be the way he done it at the time. He hadn't pushed it too far, but it was a really torquey engine, and it done well. And I think that was the first car that I kept for any length of time at all, which meant then that you were consistent in the results and in the craft and stuff like that there. And then Jay McVeigh, I started to do a bit of business with Jay then, and then he started sitting with me, and then we stuck with that car. And then when it come time to let go of it, Eugene ended up with it, and him and Paddy Toner had a nice wreck in it. Wasn't it Paddy Toner, Eugene?
Aye. Me and Paddy, yeah, Ian, another big wreck, But I want to take you back. I want to take you back. The black Escort with a white stripe out over the roof of it. We did the forestry championship.
No, but it was in the middle of all that, if you get what I mean. It was during that white Escort time, because do you remember I ended up having the Manta and the black Escort, because we bought that black Escort to sell. That's what we bought it for. And Eugene and I bought it in England, and our older brother Peter had an interest in rallying, and he come to me and he says, I'd like to do a bit of rallying. And I says to him, well, no, we'll get you a car. And he says, no. He says, I have a win a pound, but he says, I need to win a pound. And I says, what do you mean? And he says, well, I want to do a bit of rallying, but I don't want to lose to win a pound. And I says to him, right, well, I'll do you a deal. I says to him, you give me the money, and I'll use the money, and you use a car. And then whenever you want to stop, I'll give you back the money, and I'll sell the car or whatever. So that black Escort just happened to be the car, and that's the one that Eugene searched the boy's house and everywhere for the bits. And we took it home, and it was a genuine RS 1800 at the time, and we had it for the first rally, and then I because remember, Eugene, we were doing one of the first rallies, one of the first ones, and you remember we all stayed in RD when Mickey fired, and I sold him the white Escort with a 2-litre Cosworth engine, and we went to the gravel rally, and he didn't want to start in front of me, and I wouldn't stay behind. I wouldn't let him. I wouldn't go in front of him for badness. And he knew why, because we caught him and passed him halfway through the stage just out of pure badness, like if nothing else, And that was the black and white car. And we went on that year, Eugene and I, to do the Southern Forestry Championship. And we'd done all the rounds except for the very last one. And it was an uncle of ours had died in America, and we had to go to the funeral. And we were leading it, and probably, I think at the time we should have won it, but you had to start all events to claim it. And that was the last year that was the regulations. Had done away with them after that there. And we that was what happened to that. We didn't win the championship then because of that. But then that was the white Escort was the main thing, and then the black car was there. But then I went to the Manta. Then I bought the Manta of that shell was a Fisher shell, and that car come from Dave Brooks, or from Russell Brooks, and either Brooks wrecked it or Fisher wrecked it. My understanding of it was that Fisher wrecked it, and instead of fixing it, they shelled it.
Okay.
And then the shell was sold, and it was repaired. And a fella, Dickie Hall, he's at a bit of rally now.
Yeah.
He got the car, and it was him that the yellow came from, and it was all painted yellow inside and out. And then he sold it till a fella, Brian McCluskey.
Oh yeah.
Would have had a few good cars, and still has a few cars that he holds on to. So Brian had it, and they've done it. Him and Kieran Shaw done a few rallies in it, and then I went down one night and bought it off him, and then that was we really pushed the boat out then when we had that click.
That was the car that really. That was the one that's the wider public got to know who you were. That was the you're getting overall results, and people were starting to notice who Charlie Donnelly was.
The big thing was that we'd done the championship. Before that we done rallies everywhere, and we done them when they suited to do them financially, and when it suited for a certain car or whatever. And we'd have been rallying here, there, and everywhere, all over Ireland. But then when that came along, we done the national championship on it. So that and the first year, I think, did we get second or third in it? The first year or something, and then we won the board the championship on it too. I don't know, that was the car, and then I it was John Conway, the sponsor fella that has Meteor Electrical. He was used to sit with me in that time, and it was him said to me that we needed to change it, and I says why? And he says that the speeds was unreal. He says, and if we went off, could we got hurt and all, but I suppose at the time we thought that was more important, but in hindsight, we went and bought the Sligo, and we bought the Sligo, and it come off George Cullen, and there was lots of things back them days that worse than what Paul done. And we had to ratify them with a Sligo, and it cost us a fortune. We put there was a bit of the turbo went up through the bonnet one day, and John Donnelly, the creator, he worked hard to try and get it sorted, but we had to get it mapped, and we had to get loads of stuff done to it, But it was a great old car too, but it's just I hadn't the money to put into it, to make it as good as it needed to be at the time, So we concentrated more. But the time
you finished with it, you had turned it into a good car. You had turned it into a good enough car.
We got it there surely, but it basically we lost the momentum.
Yeah,
we lost the momentum because it was too much to do.
It was a total bag of shite, Charlie. Just
well, that could have been that too.
I got into drive it a couple of times, and I just kept shaking my head, and I never knew how you could keep it on the road for a start, and I never knew where Charlie could get a time out of it. You get into drive the Manta. I drove the Manta a couple of times. When you get into drive the Manta, there was power in it. It stopped. It turned in. It did everything. You get into that old Sligo, if you had a bump on it, you were steering it another 100 yards up the road. It never stopped properly.
Eugene, that was all part of it, Eugene, in them cars.
Yeah, but that was your ability to drive anything, Charlie. In fairness,
that was all part of it.
Yeah, but they were just. I don't know, that car, I never liked it from the day it came about the place. I just thought it was a pig of a car and a bag of shite. Like, you know.
Well,
That was my-
I got a lot of great. I got a couple of results, you know, and some time things, but I got a lot of good results on it in the forest. You know, fairly decent results. With a racing in the bushwhacker again, Robbie McGurk and Josh and Sam's father racing. He would have been out then in the Escort and stuff at that time.
Yeah,
And when the boys got there, you know, there was a lot of results got for it, but nothing. It was not. It wasn't. As Eugene says, we needed to spend money on it that I just wasn't going to make available to do that. You know, so that was the way it went. And then I came up from that. Then we went to the Corollas. Then after that, and on my side of the rally and the car thing, I just, you know, I was too involved with stuff at home and the guides and stuff like that there. So then I didn't. Eugene was the one started the rally, and I was kind of the fallback at that time. So any extra money I had, he made use of it. But that was, hey, at the end of the day, that was, you know, that was the way we went. And then when with the two Corollas, then I would have used one of them. And even when with the one, that's why we ended up with two, because I used it and wrecked it. Jesus Paddy and me wrecked it through it. And then we had to buy a second one to get him to the next event, you know.
Yeah.
But that's roughly the way the whole thing went, you know, from start to finish, isn't it, Eugene?
Okay, no, that's a shortened version of it.
Yeah.
Stories.
Yeah,
Connor, don't you jump in there, Connor?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Eugene, so the G3, which you stuck at for a couple of years, that's probably where the consistency really started to build and you became well known or started to become well known at that stage around Ireland. What were the G3 years like?
Well, I had this overwhelming appetite to win rallies. And it wasn't the case that, you know, it wasn't the case that I got up in the morning to go to a rally and said, I'm going to win this or I'm going to get a great result. And it all kind of came from back in the very early days. You know, back in 86, the first rally I won was, which you would know, Connor, was the Marfell Lanes rally. And I won that with my best friend at the time, or my best friend in the world, was lad Aidan McKenna. And Aidan, unfortunately, got killed a couple of months after we won that rally. And I won 2 or 3 rallies on the bounce. Like, they were all small, these wee lanes type rallies and single stage rallies. And, you know, the thrill of winning, like, I don't care who you are, when you won something, you know, that adrenaline rush and that, you know, that sense of achievement never leaves you. And in 1989, like I them 2 or 3 years from 86 to 89, I tried really hard to do well, and I got really heavily involved in competing, and I did a serious amount of rallying, you know, with Charlie's support. But in 1989, I won the Monaghan Stages Rally in another car that we bought for sale. But that's where I met Paul. I went to Carlow to continue a campaign on the national championship, and we went out of the rally, and I'm pretty sure that's where we met after that rally in Carlow, Paul, in the bar, I think.
No, you were trying to swipe a fag.
Which is not changed there.
Yeah, we were outside in the car park. I was having a cigarette and he came out for one. But we had met each other on the kind of side of the road thing and that. But I was with Johnson that time in the 240, and we were out as well. I think the 240 was just so unreliable. We were so unlucky with it, and Eugene ended up being unlucky with it. Jerry McVeigh ended up being unlucky with it. It must have been the unluckiest 240 in the country, but we ended up.
I finished it, Paul.
You what?
I finished it.
You finished it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we ended up meeting there, but we didn't. We just became friends because when I finished up in '93, I wasn't at any rallying at all, but we had met up a lot of times socially and weddings and whatnot before we even talked about me sitting with him or doing a rally or anything like that. But to get back to your G3 story, you continue on there.
No, but I just, it's ironic that that's how we met. Like, and then, as you say, we never considered, you know, competing together or anything like that there. But you know, in that was in 89 or 80. What it was, I lost my train of thought. 86, I think I won that rally.
Yeah, it was 89 you won Monaghan.
Sorry, I won the rally in 89, and in 90, I went to America for a couple of years.
I left you to the airport.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I didn't compete then, but when I came home again in 92 or 3, there was just this overwhelming, you know, urge to just to drive again. And because I'd won a rally and did well when I was younger, you know, I knew I had a bit of an old talent, and I knew that, you know, I might be far away if I had the machinery. And that's where the whole, you know, the whole buying and selling and, you know, try to make enough money and try and better myself and try and get a car that could get me into a position where, you know, you could chase for the head of the field. And lo and behold, you know, I did try quite a few cars till I stumbled across that G3. And I bought the car, Kevin Barrett. Kevin had quite a good few results in it as well. But I just, you know, I was just lucky with the bit of an experiment that Barry and I did with it. That, you know, we just stumbled into that experiment and went to the first rally, and lo and behold, the thing was fit to set top 5 times. Like, so I said, right, this thing I can manage to afford to keep it. So we just park her in the shade and work away at it, and slowly but surely get it to the point where we have it at its maximum. And John Donnelly, mind you, John Donnelly from Bear was massive help with that car as well, in suspension setup, and he did a little bit of work on gearboxes and diffs and stuff for us as well. But yeah, that was the first car that I had won a championship with, which was the Border Championship. And I don't think I had won an outright rally with it, but you know, we had fantastic success with it. Then, you know, you went to the big rallies, and my first meeting with Paul Nagel was in Killarney, I think, in 2000, or maybe it was 99. And, you know, we had great success with the car. And Paul and I then embarked on doing several of the national rounds of the international rallies. That sounds a bit stupid, but that's the way it was. They created the 2 separate rallies within one. And we were the victims of the first separation of that there at the time. I can't remember what year it was. It was either 99 or 2000. But, you know, that urge and that feeling of being fit to achieve a big result out of a car, which was a bit unconventional, didn't look the same as everything else. Great yoke to drive. You just sat back and she did all the work for you, you know, and it suited my style of driving. Like, I wasn't overly flamboyant. Not like Charlie would have been.
That's where Eugene and I differed completely. He started the rally. And thought about the result. I started the rally, and all I thought about was driving as hard as I could the whole rally, and wherever it finished, it finished.
That was very true. You know, there was no. I used to sit with Charlie, and there was absolutely no game plan. Trying to.
Eugene used to sit in the start line, and the boy would be like 30 seconds or whatever, and Eugene would say, right Charlie, and I'd say, right, and he said, no, if we can get through this first stage, we might win this rally. And that is where it all started, like, because I just all I wanted to do, like, the whole thing to me was the driving. Everything else was immaterial. The driving was the whole thing. I just really enjoyed the driving and pushed the thing till the limit and over it. And that was, and probably until I got a bit older, didn't even know what the limit was, and found it out a few good times.
But just going back a bit, like going back to how we grew up, and then around Dripperstown, as Charlie alluded to earlier, you know, you had a lot of talented young fellas like Greg McCormick, and there was a few other characters about there, and that was the way, you know, there was a bit of madness in there. And I'm not saying any of them are mad today, but there was a bit of madness. Connor, you come from that end of the woods, like you got the tail end of it. And Charlie fell into that, like, where you got into a car and you were flamboyant. You made it do things that you hung the tail of it out and you made it do things that nobody else could do with it.
Greg McCormick and I went to Donegal to harvest, right? He had a black Escort. And it was a right fit 2-litre one with downdrafts and whatever. And I was in one of them, or that red Escort, I think. And
we
stripped her and Greg stripped her and put her back together again and the whole 9 yards anyway. Landed the scrutiny. Scrutiny put his foot in the brake pedal halfway down to the floor. And when you pumped it, it was fine. And he looks at Greg and he says, "That'll not do." Greg says, "Why not? You can pump it. I can pump it." Now you'll have to get it blade. So down the road, Greg come down beside us anyway, and underneath her and tried to bleed it and messed about anyway and weren't getting anywhere. So pair of grips onto the pipe on the back of her, up the scrutiny, the boy put his foot in the pedal, big hard pedal, no bar, all good. So I says to Greg, "I'll run behind you in case anything happens." So no bar. Up to the first stage anyway, and he took off down the road and waited on me after him. Oh, I know it was the first, second, or third stage, whatever. Round the corner, and here Greg was sitting anyway. So we pulled in and pushed him out, didn't we, Jennifer?
Yeah.
Yeah, we pushed him out and away on went. And the whole day, the two of us done that the whole day, like, you know. And we were racing each other and having the day's crack. It wasn't about a result or anything else. So it wasn't nothing like that at all.
But that's was a
the day we done. Go on ahead, sorry.
Yeah, there was a flamboyance there, guys, that came out of that area, and the lads all grew up, and there was no structure to their driving. They just drove as hard as they could, And, there was John Kelly, and John achieved a bit of success in rallying in the early days, and then obviously Greg, Charlie, and there's a couple of other lads there, But that's where I first seen it, and when I got older, I more or less yearned for getting to the finish and having a structure around what I was doing in a rally car, not that flamboyant thing, And the G3 at that time just gave me that. It scratched that itch. Like, it was that type of car that you could sit back. It ended up very reliable. It had a bag of power and it suited my style of driving, And like, we had fantastic results out of it. And I don't think, I sold the car to Niall Maguire, and there's a couple of people drove it afterwards, but nobody really achieved that sort of success at the beginning,
Mm-hmm. I remember, I think it was Donegal in 2000, and Bertie Fisher had been interviewed. He was flying about, and he always said he always did to see Eugene Donnelly coming through, because he said he was one of the best drivers to watch. The lines he took and everything else, it was always a pleasure to watch him. That must have been a huge compliment coming from Bertie at that time.
Well, I'd met Bertie through Charlie a few times, back in...
I paid Bertie to say that, by the way. Bertie and I used to go up and down Ireland till... Remember the very first competitors thing? Do you remember the drivers...
yes.
Association thing or whatever? Him and I used to sail up and down Ireland, up and down at that time, because of that there. So I told him to say that. Go on ahead.
But I met him a few times. Well, obviously got to know him quite well. So Charlie says we were members of that Competitors Association thing, and Bertie used to be at that there. But the days of the G3, I remember him saying to me, would you not think about doing something in a bigger car and all the rest? I didn't have money, just didn't have that appetite at that time, because it was a lot of money to get into a four-wheel drive car, and it was a lot of money, to go away off and do your Tarmac Championship or anything like that. So I was happy with my lot, but obviously after a year or two, and then I had done, I'd done the Forestry Championship, Paul Nagel and myself as well, in a Mark II Escort, a BDA, and I was doing that much rallying. It was common second nature to me just to get in behind the wheel of anything. And the results were coming, and there's nothing beats a man that is match fit. If you're doing a lot of rallying, just the times come, you don't have to work at it. And as I say, it just got to the point where I was outgrowing the cars that I was driving. I was going too fast on them, or pushing them over their limits, and it just got to a point where I said, no, I have to look at this in a different way, And I think when Paul Nagel, Paul Cayley, did the Northern Ireland Forestry Championship, that was quite evident that something else was going to happen. I seen it anyway.
And that choice of doing the Forestry Championship, like, you know, were you happy in either surface, or did you have a preference there for the tarmac or the forestry, or, you know, where did the heart lie?
Tarmac.
No, to be honest, I thoroughly enjoyed the gravel. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But there wasn't enough of a challenge in it, to be honest. And it's hard to describe that. But when I come away from a forest rally, I was great. You know, if I won one, it was brilliant, great, blah blah blah. But when I went to a tarmac rally and I got a good result of that day, I come away feeling a lot more achievement. I think it was a case that most of the gravel rallies, anybody that had done them a few times, or anybody that was local till the Pacific Rally, you were out to beat them because of local knowledge. Whereas you went till a tarmac stage, you wrecked the stage, you were on a level par with everybody. Well, except a few guys that completely blackened them. But you know, that's where I got the most.
What do you mean by that, boys?
We'll not get too controversial in this.
No. Have to have the paper here.
Rally once for controversial about wrecking, but anyway, that's another story we can come across. Yeah. But yeah, look, to answer your question, Connor, there was no real preference other than and yearning that I could do better on tarmac, but I thoroughly enjoyed driving on gravel. And
2002, you did that in Nesbitt's Celica GT4. What was the choice of going, or and you know, the list of events you did that year? Like, you were from one end of the country and doing back-to-back events.
Yeah, I think Glenn Allen and I counted them up one night, and it was 30. He had done 33 and I'd done 35 or something. Yeah, look, it was all about seat time, and it was all about getting as much rallying under my belt as I possibly could. And if you ask me why did I pick the Celica, well, one, I could afford it. Two, it was a bag of shite, another bag of shite. But there was enough parts and there was enough knowledge in the country to run one of those 185s at the time. And Derek McGeehan, I asked him to run it. So he, to be fair to him, you know, he got his head around it and got stuck into it, but he never could improve the handling of it because it was not a nice car to drive from a handling point of view. But again, I coming out of a two-wheel drive car, anything with that amount of grip and that amount of torque was going to impress you. But anybody that got into that car afterwards said the same thing, you know, big shake to drive.
And you finished that year in the Subaru S5 on the Western International Rally, which you won, and that was yourself and Paul Kiley's first win. You know, what was that like, having, you know, been pushing to get to this level, to that point, and then getting into the WRC car and then taking the win in the WRC car?
I think Paul can describe that better than I can, because I was floating a bit, you know. He could absorb all the atmosphere and you know, the process of it all. Like, I think we didn't have the best of starts. I think we got a puncture on the rally, and I think we even had a puncture. I broke a rim on the test, and we just didn't have the best of starts to the rally. But as it progressed, I knew that Paul was monitoring the situation, and I knew that, you know, the times were getting better. And when Paul gets very focused, you can hear it in his voice. There's no shouting, and there's no, well, not that he shouted or anything like that, but it was always very professional. You know, a professional way of going on. Everything was pinpoint accurate. You know, the road timing was correct. We were arriving everywhere at the right time. The notes were being delivered just impeccably. So I knew after the third or fourth stage that, shit, we're going hard here, because your man, he's really on his game. Like, so something has to be happening here. But I just did my job, and I got completely blocked afterwards. And therefore, I don't remember a whole lot about the end of it. As I say, Paul could tell you more than me.
And Paul, like, you know, I suppose picking up there, like, was there a difference in Eugene in the S5? Because, like, the next year, you know, you had great success, or Eugene had great success in the car. I know you were sharing the co-driver seat, but what was Eugene like in the S5? Was it a world of difference, or was it just Eugene, but just the car was giving him that bit extra confidence?
How the whole thing started that year was, he used to come to my house in Sligo, because as Eugene and he still is, was always on the road all hours of the night. And he used to ring and say, "You're around?" Yeah, such things. So he called over one night in late 01. And he was talking about this, that, and the other, and whatever. And it came up about that he had bought this GT4. And I always wanted a run. And I hadn't sat in a car in a long time. I had done a couple of rallies with Jerry Maffei in a Group N car in 99 or 98, I think, just Sligo, maybe one other. And he mentioned this GT4. I thought, Jesus, that wouldn't be too bad. What are you doing with that? And he says, "I'm doing the Northern Ireland Championship and the Southern Championship." And I thought, all right. And of course, I left it alone for a few minutes anyway. And I said, "And who's sitting with you?" And he says, "Oh, Paul Nagel's sitting in the Southern one, but I have nobody to go on the Northern one."
Please, sir.
Yeah, please, sir, yeah.
Did you think about that very long?
I didn't know. It's a couple of minutes it took to get the question up anyway, but it didn't get off to a massive start because I didn't really understand what the Northern Ireland Championship was. And the first two things were on racetracks or whatever you call them, airfields or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one he couldn't even finish. Like, he rolled it in Bishop's Court. Like, who does that? Do you know? So then we went to. So you're on about we went to the gravel then, and the first rally we won was the what do you call it? The one up in the mountains on the tar using. What do you call it?
Oh, Dabble?
No, Mourne. Mourne rally. It was part of the circuit that year, remember?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Easter Stages. Sorry, it was Easter Stages.
Easter Stages.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
the national section of the circuit.
Yeah, and then we were fighting in the Northern that year. It was Trevor Moore and Richard Hogg and the boy, what do you call him? White, what's his name?
Oh, Gary White.
Gary White.
Yeah.
And Glenn. And it was my first experience in a big car, but for it to be on gravel, it was fabulous. Like, and the noise and the stones, and like, I think I'd only done 2 gravel rallies in my lifetime up to that, and I thought it was fabulous. And then we did have a back-to-back one where Paul Nagel couldn't go. I think he was doing something with Gary, and he couldn't go to one down south. So we done the Tour de Spurns, loaded the whole lot up, and straight down to Middleton. Was it Middleton or was it Kanturk or somewhere it was in, or somewhere down there?
It was Kanturk. It was based out of. Yeah, that.
Yeah, one was on the Saturday and all the way down the road for the one on the Sunday, and whatever. So that at the end of the year, anyway, I just always I knew Stan Harper had this world car. I just thought, I wonder what would a world car be like. So we chatted about it anyway, and then this West Rally had been kind of invented as a kind of thing to get Galway back on the map again, because it was totally out of season. They hadn't had a rally, I think, in a couple of years between the foot and mouth and the problems they had with the spectators and stuff. So this West thing kind of popped up out of nowhere over a couple of months, and we decided to go. And then we went and done the test, and it was a different world for me. You know, I just thought, Jesus, this is just unbelievable to be in a world car. And he kind of thought the same, although he had done 7,000 rallies that year anyway, so it didn't really matter to him. But the test was grand, down the road, down Dundee, and then it was going to be one big long day, which was great. Then we got the puncture on the first one, but didn't you put your back out as well or something? Because it was something, didn't you? What didn't you lose?
Third stage or whatever, I put my back out. I just, whatever way I jolted in the car, and I've a weak lower back, and I just slipped the vertebrae, you know. But yeah, go on ahead.
But I just couldn't believe how easy it was. Like, it just seems, I was just wondering what is all the fuss about this? Like, this is so easy. And he made it easy, and then because he made it easy, I thought I was doing a great job. So this must be the way it's supposed to be done. And then we were coming back,
and the rest of us were soaked to the skin, running and cutting tires. And I have a photograph somewhere in the house here where there was a one of them owls or something, a bird flew across in front of you when the white took the photo as well. So even the birds are running from this.
But even that the three of us are here, one of the important things, because I've seen it on the video so many times, was Charlie done a bit of a run around for us, you know, before the stages, like the same as anybody does. And where Pather Herson went off, he had told us about that on the notes.
Charlie had it marked for you.
He had it marked. It was, I don't know, it was like a flat 3 ride or whatever. There's 200 down. He says, forget about the 200. And it's not flat. You're not going to get stopped. And when I came around and I said it to him, I backed him off coming down to that. And then we seen Hurston out through the gate. And I just thought, there's, you know, that was my first kind of experience of vital information at the right time.
Mhm.
And as you know, it all worked out in the end. And I got blocked as
I'm
well.
all
Eugene. I don't
chuffed at
remember
that,
much
Paul.
about it. The prize
You never
giving was
told
the
me
next
that
day.
before, Paul.
You what?
You never told me that before. I'm all soft-hearted about that.
Hey, Charlie, Eugene paid me to tell you that.
There's a lot of credit.
You deserve that.
And again, then following
Compliment doesn't easy got that, Paul, boys. Let me tell you.
year, good job we're recording it.
Uh-huh.
And in 2003, you know, good success and a win in Killarney. So
This is me, is it?
yeah.
Yeah, well, we went to
But
Mayo
what
first
happened
before that.
what happened in the circuit the week before?
Well, we went to Mayo first, and we won Mayo, which was the start that year of his national campaign. Then we went to the circuit. Yeah, then we went to the circuit, and we had that big accident in Sligo. Basically, it was only out the road from me. But Killarney after that was, again, it was like the Galway thing. I didn't know what all the fuss was about, because it was just so and again, it was lash and rain at that one as well, Charlie. Remember,
Mm-hmm.
it was really bad rain, and the
I
coom was
just,
really.
Paul, you not remember the pressure was on that, that week. She got wrecked the week before. Remember, Eugene?
Oh, do I remember? Whenever I started, when I got into Stan's car, obviously we had to insure it. Like, I don't remember the value of it at the time, but it was a big lot of money. And that was my first experience of insuring a car. And it's, you know, it's one thing to, you know, pay for the hire, pay for fuel, pay for, you know, mechanics and all that sort of stuff. You know, it's a massive bill. And like, I'm sure at that time, you know, Nesbitt was winning the championship in 01 and 02. And he was quite vocal about the costs running these cars. Like, and it was getting into 25 and 30 grand a rally. Now, to be fair to Stan Harper, when we did the Galway rally, it kind of was between the three of us, we negotiated the deal. Charlie would get in one ear, I'd get in the other, and Paul would just get the base, you know. And I managed to get a deal out of it that I could afford. But this insurance thing was important. So I went to the couple of first rounds of the Northern Ireland Championship in the car, and you know, I got my head around insuring it everywhere I went. Like, but Charlie, so-called, had to bring it back to our memory. I went to the circuit in that year, and I didn't insure it. I thought, you know, as Paul said, this thing was looking easy now at this stage, and there's no big deal, like, you know. So of course I didn't bother insuring it. We had a great run on the first day. I think we were lying maybe second, or actually, did we end up?
No, we were second, and then she wouldn't start coming out of Park Fermi the next day.
Yeah. So, you know, we had to be pushed out of Park Fermi. It was a big time penalty. Like, I was thinking, well, this is the rally over, you know.
Yeah, but nobody knew what the time penalty was, if you remember.
Yeah.
Nobody could confirm it.
Yeah, they were saying it was 10 minutes, and you know, all sorts of things that got there. So you were kind of saying, well, I was anyway, this rally is over. Is there any point even in continuing? And I was saying, well, sure, I paid to hire the car and never thought about the insurance thing. And we went out to do those stages outside Sligo. And I wasn't even thinking about the result, or wasn't thinking about trying or nothing. And turned her into a 4 left. And I obviously didn't turn it in hard enough. And it understeered, washed out across the road, and it's a fairly well publicised accident. Any of the rally fanatics will know about it. It's well enough on YouTube. I wrecked this yoke, like, and I'm not joking. You, Plum Tyndall and the crew were in the corner of the field, and they caught it on camera. And Plum come up and interviewed me, and again, it's well enough publicised on YouTube. It was probably one of the lowest points in my life till that point. because, you know, I didn't know where I was going to get the money out to fix this thing. Like, it was, you know, I was wrecked, like, and 10 grand didn't fix these yokes at the time. It was a 50 grand bill, like, and I was just scratching my head going, where am I going to get this? And that's rallying over. I'm finished, like, and I met Charlie. Did you come up to the scene of the accident, Charlie?
Yeah, you rang me and I come over.
I
No,
remember,
it wasn't pretty. Me tell you, it wasn't good.
no, it wasn't good. Like, I remember saying to you, like, what am I going to do here? You know, and you kept saying to me, I'll be all right, be all right, be all right. But I tell you what, I just did not know where or what I was going to do. And this is where the team comes into it, and this is where, you know, your friends, and this is where everybody pulls behind you. And like, a lot of people has asked me what has been, you know, the success, what led to our success. You see, when the chips are down and your ass is on the floor and the tears run in your eyes and you don't know what direction to go, that's where the people around you are so important. And it's like, it's not necessarily about the people with the money to come in and help you and do that there. It's about people behind you that lift you off the floor and gives you a kick in the ass and gives you a direction to go. And you're capable, or I was always capable of finding my way out of the problems if I had that wee bit of a leg up, or somebody could give me the, you know, get their shoulder onto my arm. And that's what the guys did for me. And, you know, I couldn't say it enough, and I'll probably say it more before we finish this. To go back rallying today, even if I was to do it, I don't think I could find the team that I had back then that were fit to carry me the way they did, you know. And I say, there was loads of guys came along with finances, and loads of guys that I was involved with over the years, and buckets of money, and they just didn't get this. Like, they just didn't get that it was this crew of people, and them two men there especially, that, you know, that carried me. It wasn't the finances, or it wasn't anything else. It was just that understanding of personality that I was. And, you know, they were there to pick me up, or they were there to listen to the bullshit, or they were there to cry on their shoulder or whatever, you know. And that was worth 2 seconds a mile, like, you know. But to go back to your
Stan Harper was like, Stan fixed the car that time, and he repaired a lot of the stuff that time rather than fitting new stuff on it. No, and I remember she landed to Killarney. Killarney must have been the following week, Paul, was it?
2 weeks. 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah.
Well, she landed to Killarney anyway, and the back window wasn't in her because he hadn't got one until then. Like, it was the back window or something. But I remember doing something around the back of her anyway. And as he says at the time, he says the paint was still wet on her. But hey, that was definitely an occasion that you wouldn't want to be doing too often. Definitely. But again, as Eugene said, it was great. No, it was, looking back at it, the support and the dealing with it was something different now. You know?
Like, to be fair to Stan, Charlie, at the time, like, you know, he treated us extremely well. Like,
unbelievable.
He did milk the situation, whereas many a guy could have milked the shade out of it and said, oh, look, you know, you crashed the car and this is the bill and that's it. He did not do that by no means. Like, Stan stood by us, and as I say, he was part of the team at that time, and he was as much wanted me to succeed as anybody. And he did everything he could to fix that car as efficiently as he possibly could. But to land to Killarney, and the paint still wet on her, and Paul and me climbed into her, and I don't even think, did we do a test on it, Paul?
No.
Straight up the gap.
Yeah, climbed in it, and away we went. And it was one horrible day. But there's again, the Kumo tire struck again, like the relationship with Philip Moynihan, and the you know, the offer of the product that he brought to us that nobody else would try at the time, and nobody else had the balls to try at the time. And suddenly, well, I had a couple of years on it, you know, with the Sligo, and doing force rally, and did a bit of tarmac with the Sligo as well. You know, this tire was getting there, and it was ideally suited for the wet conditions. And lo and behold, the next thing, we find ourselves competing for the one of the Killarney rally, which never in my wildest dreams would I have thought about that. But as the rally transpired, you know, the heat really come on. And at the end of the rally, the car was overheating. I'm not sure whether it was I'm not sure it was to do with the accident in the circuit, but the guys were throwing water into, you know, at the end of every stage we were out draining it and putting water in it, like, and it certainly was nail biting. And you know, I remember saying to Stan, you know, what about, can you turn back the power a bit on him? He says, here, listen, it's going to blow, like, drive it on, like, and try to be don't over rev it, try to be as attentive as you can to it, but you know, fingers crossed. And we were in a big battle with Austin, and like the battle was fairly tight, like, you know, and he was coming at me, and I couldn't really take the risk of driving it any harder. I don't remember if you remember much about it, Paul, but you know, I just put it out of my mind, like, and I just stayed focused on the driving, you know. And
I remember enough about it, but in my renaissance of a career, it was only like fifth or sixth or seventh or eighth rally in. I'm not sure how long in it was, but even to finish second there would have been a huge result. You know, the fact that we were leading on one and then he was leading on the next one and we were leading on one or whatever, I thought to be involved in that battle at all was I'm happy enough to be here regardless of what the result was. So
yeah,
the end result obviously was the only Killarney I got. I think you got one after that, but I never won a Killarney after that, so I was delighted to get it at all.
Yeah,
I think Stan Harper was quite delighted too. Remember that as well.
And
Emotionally,
you know, at that time, Austin McHale was, you know, like, we'd lost Bertie a few years previous to this, but like Austin was one of those legends of Irish rally and still is to this day. Like, to be competing with him, to gain his respect, that must have been quite special back then too.
yeah. Like, Austin was he's a hard competitor. Like, there was no, you know, when you met Austin at a rally, you know, there was no friendships or not like that. When the rally was over, yeah, certainly, but his team fought hard. There was no doubt about it. And Brian Murphy, who sat with him, you know, Brian was one of these wind-up characters, like most of the guys were. Paul was more fit for him than I would have been, and probably Charlie. But Brian, you know, Brian was just one of them characters that I felt a wee bit intimidated by him, to be quite honest. And Austin, you know, Austin was that character. You couldn't really have a conversation with him. When a rally was over, sure, he would chat to you, but he was just one of these type of people that his mindset was, I'm here to win the rally and I'm going to win it no matter what cost. And I suppose I didn't want to be like that. You know, he taught me that one thing. You know, I didn't want to be that type of person that to win a rally, you just sacrificed everything, and, you know, it crept into your personality. And I learned a few things from that event, like that sometimes you don't have to be at that 11/10 to win rallies, like, you know, and you know, that was a bit of a lesson, all right. Like, but here to win it was unbelievable, you know.
and Charlie, it was around this time that you were putting your own career on hold to really get behind Eugene and more or less become team manager in a sense.
Well, that year, the decision after that Galway rally, then to continue, you know, to do that, then that meant that was a no. I had to, you know, decide that I was going to put my rally into one side, and then I done all the sort of organising and stuff and the gravel crews and all that sort of stuff. But I enjoyed that. Like, it was, you know, it was like as you know, to take it from the reverse side, like, you know, whenever you drove a stage in the morning and you went through the notes and you noticed a few wee bits and pieces, or you had some other sort of song to add in or whatever, you know, and then, you know, and then the boys come off the stage with a fast time, you know, it was unbelievable. Like, like I often wonder, you know, watch things on television and you watch different bits and all the pieces, and you know, you've seen the camaraderie in a team and the way that worked, but I never experienced it until that day, you know, because we all were a team, like, you know, we all played our part. Prior to rallies, you know, you would have had the setup of the car to work on and you know, get where Eugene's driving was concerned, to, you know, to be in with him and to iron out, you know, the bugs that he felt in the car and in himself, and, you know, the bits and pieces like that. And then to be on the event, then, you know, back and forth with Paul, and then back and forth, for tire choices and all them bits and pieces and things like that. There, it was that was the start of a lot of good stuff for a few years after.
The only thing I can say about Charlie doing the notes and prepping us for the rally, you could always tell when Paul and I was out in the pits the night before. the notes wouldn't have been made very well now and again, And that's why it was a good thing to have him there, because we
Just
needed him.
Just to clear up what you're saying, he means being out on the piss the night before the recce.
Not the rally now. Yeah.
We would have been prone to that a wee bit in the early days, We enjoyed ourselves. We thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. And the boys heading away off and doing the big recce and going to the gym and all the rest. That wasn't us. That what rallying was about to us.
So it was 2004 then, Eugene. The Corolla adventure started. What was the thinking behind a Corolla? It wasn't maybe the most, you're coming from a Subaru S5. You thought maybe the logical thing would have been to go maybe like an S6, S7, but the Corolla was a bit left field at that time.
You did. Well, you can blame Philip Moynihan, but compliment him at the same time. He deserves the credit as well. But you can also tell the story about going to M Sport and all. You do.
Well, in 2001 and 2, I started to get a wee bit of success in business, and I started to get a bit smarter to what I was doing. And I'll try and not bore you with this here, but very quickly, through 2003, obviously going back to what I was saying to you earlier, I had that itch and I knew I was being fit to scratch it, and I knew, there's a possibility I can drive these cars and I can drive them to the point that they're as good as anybody else in the country. And, I just had to arm myself with the right machine. And I was fortunate enough to put myself in a position that I could go and buy a car with the help of a bit of finance through the business that I had at the time. And I went to M Sport, and Philip, as I say, Charlie mentioned there, Philip Moynihan was heavily involved with this. He was a big part of the team. He was there to be consulted. And, I said to him, look, I'm going to try something maybe for 2004. I'm going to buy a car. What are you going to buy? I said, I'm going to go and look at a Focus. So landed to M Sport, and cut the story short, they were doing me a deal for a 2002 car.
Three car was.
No, it was a 2 car.
Huh? A 2 car.
It was a 2002 car.
Yeah, 2002 car. And I was basically getting a brand new car, fully rebuilt with every imaginable spare that you could imagine. I mean, everything bar an engine and a shell. Like all the suspensions, clutches, gearboxes, diffs, everything you could think, for £400,000 sterling, plus the VAT. And gathered up the money, had it all in place to do, put the money in escrow, signed the contract, and went over to do kind of like a bit of a handover and basically agreed the deal on the car. And a particular man in M Sport said, you'll have to open an account with us.
He was the nicest fella. He's a lovely fella. I met him a few years later in Ypres, out Germany, and he had been off. His wife, I think, wasn't well, or maybe he'd lost the wife or whatever. But he was back working then for M Sport again. But he was sitting in the big boardroom, and he was sitting in the corner of the table, and he had talked back and forth. But me and people to talk was Malcolm and what do you call the other fella you do?
John Steele.
Steele, yeah. So go ahead now, finish the story now.
But yeah, so I said, yeah, that's fine. We'll open an account. This is the details. Here's the company details. Blah blah blah. And he said, well, we need your copy of your credit card. I goes, what? Do you know what, lads? No, I'm not going to do that. And I can't remember who said it. But what's wrong? I says, I said, this just doesn't feel right. I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to park the whole thing. I said, that just doesn't feel right to me. And we got up. I don't remember the circumstances we left in, but I got up and left. And of course, the story got about before I got home that I couldn't pay for the car and all sorts of crap.
But the other thing was, Eugene and I were walking out to get into the car to leave. And, we got out and we opened the door, and kind of, the way you'd look at each other over the roof of the car, before you get into it. And he looked over at me, and I looked at him, and I said, "You darn ain't getting my credit card anyway, that's for sure." I said, whatever about a credit card, you're definitely not getting mine anyway.
But whenever I was sitting at the docks, we were sailing back out of Killarney or Stranraer, whatever, back to Belfast. Monaghan rang me, Philip rang me, and he says, "Well, how'd you get on?" And I told him the story. And he says, "Ring me when you get off the boat on the other side." Now, this was late in the evening, and I think we would have been getting in at maybe 12 or 1 o'clock at night. And the next thing, got off the boat, rang him, and I says, "What's up?" He says, "You, Derek McGeehan, and Paul Cayley and myself are on a flight day after tomorrow to Holland." And wasn't it yourself, Paul? Aye, you were with us, yeah.
Yeah, we went to the Condrops.
Yeah. So
left me at home.
Left Charlie. I didn't know what I thought. I
was all right when
there was no point bringing in Charlie when you wouldn't give over the credit
card. I was grand when the 400 grand was being borrowed, but it was no good then when it was down the ladder a bit.
So, I was under the impression we were just going to watch this rally and look at a car or two. I didn't think too much about it. And anyway, story short, we landed at the rally, and cowl piss of a day, walked down this service park to go to meet this guy called Eric Weavers and look at this Toyota Corolla. I knew nothing about a Corolla, I knew nothing about it. But anyway, landed at his service park, and lo and behold, he went off the road and crashed the car. So Philip rang him, or he rang Philip, and said, "Look, guys, watch the rally today and come up to my workshops tonight. Stay over there. I'll be for to fix the car, and you'll get a look at it tomorrow and get a bit of a drive on it." And I was saying, right, okay, all right, fair enough. That's what we do. Went, watched the rally, drove up to his place in Holland, booked into this dungy wee hotel, got drunk in the bar that night, and got up the next morning, went round to this workshop where his two lads had the car repaired. There was a bit of frontal damage, big white wing on it, a white bonnet, a white bumper. And he says, "Come on, get in, I'll take you for a drive." So I was a bit delicate, but got in anyway, took off. I'm sorry to tell the story if Eric's listening, because this is quite embarrassing to tell him. But on the way out round this road anyway, and on the way back, and this thing was all over the shop. It wasn't taking grip and it was sliding out, but came to this square left bend just before his workshop. And the guys, Paul and Derek and everybody, was standing at the workshop door, and they could see this last corner, and round come Eric, flicked the handbrake, lost it, and down and noseways into a big dike and took the front out of it again. So I looked over at him, and he was in a bit of a fluster, so got out of the car, and the boys were all come running down. They brought a jeep, pulled the car out of the ditch, brought it back into the workshop, and he was so embarrassed. And Derek McGeehan, in fairness to him, he started to crawl under it and look around it, and he said to them, "Would you have the bits and we'll fix it?" Because it was just cosmetic and a radiator, maybe, and an intercooler. So lo and behold, they fixed it. They straightened up the wheels on it, and they aligned it and did a few things. And Eric says, "Come on, I'll take you for another run." And I just went, "No, you're not taking it." I think I'll take it for a drive myself. And I pointed over at Derek, and I says, "Come on, you jump in beside me. We'll go for a spin in this thing." So we actually got them to close a short bit of the road, like maybe only half a K or 3/4 of a K, and did a few runs in it. Came back in, reversed it in, got out, and he was sitting in a wee office, and I said, "Right, what's the deal in this car?" And again, we bought everything with the car, including the kitchen sink. We got more wheels and dampers and gearbox. We got just a car with it, barring the shell and maybe an engine, and did the deal with them. And at the time, it worked out just slightly over half of what I would have been paying for the Focus, maybe a bit more. But when I was looking at it, I was saying, "Well, why am I buying this thing?" And Philip was saying, "But this is a good car. This car has never seen its true potential in Ireland, even though Austin had one of them, and Greer had one of them, and there was a few of them about.
It was Ian Greer's car. The car Ian Greer had.
It was Ian Greer's car, and like, they were kind of supposed to be coming to the end of their life. But talking to Eric and what Eric was planning to do over the next couple of years, he was engine development, damper development, and he was one of those sort of fellas that you could talk to, and you could, I just warmed to him, and I just got this good feeling from him that this was the right thing to do. And lo and behold, we bought the car, landed home, transferred him the money. And I remember transferring the money and going to myself, I wonder, can I trust him to deliver the car? But no, he was sound, and he came over and he stayed a few days and introduced us to ex-TTE engineers, and got us a damper engineer, and got us an engine engineer. And when the car was home, I think it was just after Christmas, we got all the guys together and we did a big test up in Muckish in Donegal. And at the start of the day, I was saying, this is a bag of shite. And by the finish of the day, you and me were getting out of our Paul, and we were going, oh boy, this is some yoke, like. And that was the start of it. Like that, we just warmed to it. The minute we got it sorted, we just warmed to it, I just felt so at home in it.
And Paul, suppose you echo them sentiments. Did you feel there was something special there that day in Muckish?
Yeah, it was probably the best thing I was ever in. It was the most advanced car anyway. Up to before that, it was the best thing was obviously the Subaru. It was still manual. This tickle shift and the left-hand drive and all of this just looked. The whole thing seemed to be so put together properly, and McGeehan was all over it, and it was exciting enough. And then obviously heading down to go, he bought a left-hand drive road car then as well, obviously to get him at that. I was a bit worried about the left-hand drive thing, but when we landed down in Galway after the first few stages, and there was only really two or three at the race, I didn't think we were going to be on that kind of a pace, but thankfully we were. And again, conditions were shitty, which seemed to suit us on the first day. The second day was pretty dry, but the first day was shitty enough. But it definitely was the start of an exciting time.
And the fact that Tapio Laikinen was there, a European champion, he was in a
British champion, yeah, a professional driver, so.
Yeah. Why are you trying to say we weren't professional drivers?
He must have watched this, Eugene. Huh?
But no, I think we were all amazed, and sure, frick me, my head grew about 10 times the size it normally was whenever we rightfully were the winners of the rally, but it was the bogey times that caught us out on that event. Like we should have won it. But I wasn't begrudging Tapio as won, but it just proved to me that all them inner things that I was fit to drive these cars, and that gave me a serious confidence boost and give me that box was ticked that I did the right thing by buying that car, and by investing this amount of money into it and starting on this journey,
So that was part one. What can we say? Like the Corolla years is just about to kick in, and we get to hear the stories that's coming soon. I don't know what more we can say about it. It's going to be the next episode is a real roller coaster. Connor, isn't it so exciting what we've heard and what's to come?
Absolutely. Listen, to me, it brought me back to, my younger years and with Greg McCormick and John Kelly and Paddy Toner and, that crew. And, reliving the stories there with Eugene and Charlie and Paul. And again, the bond between Charlie and Eugene, it's so strong and they're so supportive of each other, throughout their careers in rally. And it's just incredible to listen to their tales.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And like I say, once we get into the Corolla and the banter between the two of them, and then Paul, Paul is just such a nice way with him. But more of that soon. So that's it. Can please like, share, rate the podcast. All those things makes a huge difference. The numbers this last few weeks have just blown our minds. So please keep doing what you're doing. It's greatly appreciated. So until the next time, take care, speak soon, and bye.